Order the Economic Development Infrastructure Committee at 9:30. Call the roll, please.
Charles is on her way. Wipert?
I'm here.
Markham?
Here.
I don't see Cavell yet.
He says
Spiz?
he'll be here in
Present.
a minute.
Okay, thank you. Miller?
Here.
Gershenson?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. We'll stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Now we have the approval of the minutes dated May 18th, 2022. We need a motion. Moved by Commissioner Spiz, seconded by Commissioner Gershenson. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Now we have the approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Spiz,
I'll support.
seconded by Commissioner Wiper. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Now we come to our first public comment. Anybody from the public? You got 3 minutes. State your name and
Is there items related
On the agenda.
on the agenda,
only
yeah.
to the agenda?
Ross Barranco, City of Novi.
Morning.
Morning. 9D, the Oakland University agreement. I think it's like the fifth whereas, that it says that the deputy executive and the environmental, I forgot my phone,
Sustainability
his
officer.
officer, have the right to approve the, what was it called?
Project.
The project. So, to me, neither one of these are elected officials, and it's an agreement between the commission and the university. So I think it should be the Board of Commissioners who have that authority, not the deputy executive or the sustainability officer. And under the planned agreement, items 1.5 and 1.8 seem to be identical, and I'm wondering why there's the repeat of the identical wordage. It's just underlined on 1.5 and not on 1.8, and that's the only differences to it. And then item 9E, there's no what do you call it? No itemization of what these, what the monies are for. It just has a general statement. And County Commissioner Kristen Nelson, yep, the last name escapes me. She complained several times about things being submitted without some itemization of, you know, what these dollars are for, rather than just a general statement that it's for one thing. And it's also several different things, and it doesn't itemize it on item 9E. And then on item 9F, it spoke to $2.3 million for fencing and gates and that, and a pair of ankle cuffs cost a lot less than $2.3 million. And it is one of the approved items that are used for restraint. And it seems to me that that would be a much more economic solution than to put up a $2.3 million fence and gates and video cameras and all that sort of stuff.
Thank you for your time, sir. All right, so anybody else for public comment? Anyone for public comment? Hearing none, we'll call public comment closed at this time. Next, we have communications. First, the only communication we have is the second quarter CIP report.
Move to receive and file.
Moved by Commissioner Spiz to receive and file, seconded by
Support.
Commissioner Wiper. Is that a voice vote or roll call? Yes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Now we move to the consent agenda. One agenda item is fiscal year 2022 appropriations with the city of South Lion Lake.
Sylvan Lake.
Oh, Sylvan Lake, I'm sorry. Sylvan Lake for Tri-Party Road Improvement Program Project Number 55011. Moved by Commissioner Spiz, seconded by Commissioner Wiper. Oh, and Commissioner Gershenson.
Oh, sorry.
So is Wiper. I was just giving everybody credit.
Oh. Spiz moved and Wiper.
Yes.
Thank you.
All in favor, say aye.
No,
Aye.
Oh,
sorry.
No.
we'll call the vote,
Okay.
or
What are we doing?
prompt the vote.
We have one more.
The
Still getting used to
tri-party?
that digital. All right.
Ross, it's a medical office building.
We have 5 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Motion carries. Next, we'll move to our regular agenda. The first agenda item is moved by Commissioner Spiz, seconded by Commissioner Gershenson. And this is our assisting American Rescue Plan Act local recovery funds for Northwest Oakland Sanitary Drainage District Phase 1. And to discussion, we have our U.S. Congressionalwoman Alyssa Slotkin on the Zoom here. Good morning.
Good morning, everybody. Good to see you. You're very, very tiny on my screen, so I will assume that means, William, I can go ahead. Thank you for allowing me to come and speak in front of you all. This is only the second time I've testified or contributed in front of one of our county commissions, and I do it on issues that I feel extremely passionate about. I really appreciate, William, your efforts in focusing on the Northwest Oakland County Sewer Project, a project that deeply affects the part of Oakland County that I represent, Holly, through Lake Orion, Ortonville, Brandon Township, Groveland Township, and Dixie Highway in general. I'm here to ask for your support in contributing $10 million from the federal ARPA monies to purchase the capacity to join with Genesee County in this sewer system development project. We really see this as a once-in-a-generation opportunity for Oakland County's parks and smallest communities with really limited resources and failing septic systems to join a new sewer system at a fraction of what it would cost if we wanted to do this independently. And I would just note that there is an urgency here. If Oakland County doesn't commit to the project, Genesee County has been very open with us that they will move forward on their own, and they will build a system that precludes Oakland County from joining in the future. I think what's particularly interesting to me is that this project would help create what some are calling a recreation corridor along Dixie Highway. We already have the Holly Recreation Area, the Groveland Oaks Park. We have the ORV Park out there, and just do not have the septic systems available to actually encourage the economic development that we think should go along with being this recreation corridor. It also will be transformative for Holly Township, Brandon Township, Ortonville, Groveland, all communities where I have spent a lot of time with those town supervisors, with those mayors, with those local electeds, where they just cannot attract new businesses, new restaurants, new anything to their downtown areas because the septic system is failing, not available, et cetera. And beyond the economic development, the environmental impacts of this septic system, I do not think should be underestimated, not to mention that, of course, the union jobs that would come with doing this kind of an upgrade. I think the thing that I know has been, I've discussed this with Jim Nash, I'm glad to see him on here today, that it's just a kind of a boat anchor around our communities to not have this kind of development. And I think ultimately this kind of large project is a cost savings for the county, not just because of the economic development, but because of the revenue that will be produced from the businesses that we believe are poised to engage should they have proper water. I think just to demonstrate that I put my money where my mouth is on how I believe in this project, members of Congress are allowed this year 15 community projects, specific projects that I alone can select and advocate for through our appropriations projects, our appropriations process. Last year we got 10, and I got all 10 of those funded. This year, because of my belief in the project, we have picked this project as one of our 15 to the tune of $1 million for the engineering design of the project. So I am in this, even though, quite frankly, no matter what happens after January or after December, I will not represent this area. That's how important I think this project is. I think it's not to be missed. I know that Genesee County is literally waiting with bated breath for this meeting and for taking it to the full commission. And I just appreciate the time and wanted to put my energy and my interest behind it, and I appreciate your consideration.
Thank you. And I know you have staff on hand if you have to jump off, because you're actually gracing us with this time because you are late for your meeting that you chair.
I have a hearing I'm chairing, but thank you for the time, and Alexa and Laura are in the room. We're big believers in this, so I appreciate everyone's serious consideration, and have a good one.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Commissioner Nash, jump to you now.
Well, I really appreciate that. Thank you, Commissioner Miller. I just, all I can do is reiterate what the Congresswoman told us. We've been working with her office for at least 2 years, I think longer than that, on this project. She's been an incredible help for this. As she said, this is a significant project. There has been concern that this might cause sprawl, but I want to make sure that people understand that this would really not be able to do that. This is sized specifically for the area that would be covered, and the long-term way this is built, it couldn't be added to bring in sprawl. And this will help several lakes in that area that have homes that have failing septics around them. This will have effect on the business area along those routes, which are very heavily traveled business routes. That otherwise we might lose some of those to another county, and so this is something that really has an impact that will lasting for many years. Brian Coburn here on the screen is the project manager on this. Brian, you want to fill in anything else? Oh, you're still muted.
Sorry about that. I'll just stand by for questions. I can handle anything technical. Thank you for your consideration.
So, I mean, this is going to have a lasting impact for many years to come. Otherwise, this is failing septics are a problem across the state. The estimate is about 1 in 4 across the state septic fields is failing in some way. So this is something that will address this for a long time to come. Again, this is something that the Congresswoman's been working on with us. Although she won't be representing this in the future, I will. And working with these communities has been a real effort on our part. And we're in a place that I think this project will succeed.
And I believe our executive office, Hillary Chambers, like to say something on this as well.
Sure. Thank you so much. I did want to just reiterate what's already been said and actually ask Brian if he might provide a bit more information, because we had a meeting with Jim and his folks and all of the local officials several months ago and really found their case very persuasive on all of the fronts that have been discussed. The environmental ones, on the sprawl issue, they said they all have local ordinances to prevent that. On the jobs issue, on the once in a lifetime, I mean, Genesee County's going to build this drain. They'll build it without the capacity, as Alyssa Slotkin mentioned, so we wouldn't be able to tap in. So we feel like this is really well worth the $10 million investment of ARP funds, which clearly can be used for sewer projects such as this. I do think, Brian, if you can give the commissioners a sense of how this project is staged, because it costs $21 million for Oakland County to tap into this drain. Genesee County is only asking for $10 million at this time. And then there is the process of using the state revolving fund, the federal water infrastructure money, to do the first phase and the second phase, at which point those communities, once people start to tap in, will pay back the $11 million. So I don't know, Brian, you're the expert on this if you all are interested in, but I do think those details are kind of important, because it goes to, you know, how this is going to be brought to life, and the fact that the communities who are all spending all of their ARP dollars that they have towards this effort, towards the $11 million that they're paying to Genesee County right now, and, they still have to pay back the additional money at the end of the project. So I think that's important to understand. The other thing I was going to mention escapes me, and I'll come back to it if there's any questions. But we're fully supportive of this initiative.
Do we have any discussion?
Mr. or Chair Miller, if you want, I can go into what Hillary had.
Yes.
Yeah, sure.
Please.
So a little bit about the project itself. There's 3 phases of the project. The first phase that we're talking about today is a connection to Genesee County. The pipe would need to be oversized to serve these communities, the 4 communities in Northwest Oakland County, but they are willing to do that if we are a contributor and a participant in the project. In order to do that, we're requesting the $10 million up front so that we can help fund that project and make that capacity available for these communities going forward. All that does, that first phase, is provide the capacity. Now, there's no revenue from any customers to pay back any bonds until after the second phase of the project is built along Dixie Highway. At that point, we'd have customers connecting into the system, and then we would have a revenue stream to start paying back some of the debt that we've incurred to build the first phase and the second phase. Because the first phase, we're going to finance with Genesee through an agreement on how those are going to be paid back over time. So there's no immediate debt going to be issued to the communities until after phase 1 is built and we have a revenue, phase 2 is built and we have a revenue stream to pay back those debts. Second phase would go along Dixie Highway to serve Holly and Groveland townships. We would serve ORV Park, Groveland Oaks, potentially Holly Rec in the future. And then the 75 interchange with Grange Hall Road is part of that first phase if they decide to go forward with that portion of it. The second phase would serve Brandon and Ortonville. There'd be a force main from M15 over to Dixie Highway that would pump sewage from Ortonville over to the Dixie interceptor that we're building for phase 2. And that would allow the village of Ortonville to be served. And remember, they're on septic systems. I don't know how a downtown survives on septic systems, but they've managed to struggle along. And then it would also serve Brandon schools, the M15 corridor, and a bunch of homes along Lake Louise and Bald Eagle Lake. If you look in the packet, there's a figure 1 that shows the needs. It's got a bunch of arrows on it that shows where we've identified the needs of the communities. And then the figure 2 in that same packet shows the phasing and the costs associated with each. So hopefully I've dug in that just enough to help you understand what's going on. And I'll stand by for questions.
I thought about my one thing.
All right.
There'd been some issue regarding whether it's an assignment or an appropriation. And the resolution before you asks just for an assignment of funds so that Water Resources can negotiate with Genesee County over the terms of the agreement. After they finalize that, they'll bring it back and get the appropriation. I know that some people have asked, we've had the position before about having an actual appropriation, but that's why it's done in 2 stages so that they can commence the negotiations.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion?
I'm talking it up to COVID brain that I had last week when I forget things.
Any discussion? Commissioner Spiz, and then Chairman Woodward.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't want to reiterate everything that's been said, and I am 150% in support of this project. It's very important. Just a couple other points to note. There are businesses up there today and homes up there today that potentially cannot get their septic fields redone because of the land and not being able to perk. There are some businesses that have to put in a engineered field that is about 4 times the cost of a traditional field. And to keep those businesses there, this is very critical project for them to be able to maintain their business in that region, in that area. Otherwise, they're going to move somewhere else, which I think Commissioner Nash mentioned, that go to another county or another community because they just can't get the sewage support that they need because of the ground that's there right now. They can't put a septic field in. In some cases, they can't even put an engineered field in because they don't have the room. So it's something that is very critical to that region of our county. Thank you.
Yes. Woodward and then,
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Wiper.
And I think the need for this project is clearly made, and the questions that I'm going to raise, ask to be addressed or figured out somehow, are on the lines like, how do we make this happen? So, the first issue, I heard about the revolving loan fund to pay for a certain phase, but this ask at this point is to pay for phase 1, correct? So since ARPA doesn't have the requirement of Davis-Bacon, how do we ensure that Davis-Bacon-like, or at minimum, the building, the responsible bidder policies apply to this as well?
So Genesee County will be constructing the project, and they will have some, I believe, SRF funds. So they'll have restrictions on what they need to do, and I believe Davis-Bacon is part of that. So they'll have to comply with those rules through federal funding on the SRF side. We're contributing to that, but they're going to be the ones that have to follow the rules.
So there's no way for this project to be separated, like these funds to pay for this part versus the stuff that Genesee's building for their part?
No, essentially, we're paying for the oversizing of the pipe, so it's the whole project.
And I'd just answer that is any federal dollars that does with construction, Davis-Bacon is attached to it, so they would have to follow the Davis-Bacon wage and hour guidelines.
Okay, that is great news. When we talked about at phase 2 to be able to help pay back some of the remaining, that's $11 million that was raised, what is the estimated annual revenue that would be coming in that could actually do that? And I assume it's revenue to come in to maintain it as well as pay the debt service on it.
Correct. I'm going to have to pull that up. I don't have it handy, but it does. So the way we're looking at this for phase 2 and phase 3 is to use the infrastructure dollars to help partially offset the principal, hopefully, given the amount of money that's out there. So even without any principal forgiveness, without any grants, we still are able to turn a profit in 5 years. So what that means is we have to have enough people.
I'm sorry, Brian. When you say turn a profit, to be able to pay off the entire $11 million?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
To be able to make it, so it's going to be a 20 year. It'll be 20 years, I believe, that we'd have to pay it over. But again, we're negotiating that contract, so we don't have all the details available on how that's going to work yet. So it's hard to say in specifics. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm just trying to understand the plan. So 5 years, without any additional thing, without anything to help to pay off principal and everything, 5 years can pay off the $11 million with the revenue that would be estimated to come in through the Oakland County portion.
No, what I'm saying is that we'll have enough money to make the bond payments for that loan that we're going to have, in addition to the other loan that we'll have for phase 2 and the other loan for phase 3. So the idea is phase 1 helps us get everything started, helps us negotiate a contract, helps get us capacity, helps get us in the door so that we can actually connect to something in the future. And then the future phases, our intent is to do completely with infrastructure dollars through the SRF program. And those bond payments would have to be made over 30 years. We would pay those back with revenue that's coming in from customers, not only for the connection charges when they make the connection to the system. There's somewhere between $5,000 and $10,000 they pay per connection, and then in the monthly charges that we pay for the service that we're providing.
And sorry to interrupt, but Brian, you may want to, you keep bringing up, Dave, you keep bringing up the 11 million. That's phase 1 only. There's other costs that are associated with this build. If you want to go into more details of the overall cost that the communities are going to have to bound out for to pay this off.
Sure, yeah. First phase is about $33 million with Genesee, and so our portion of that's about 20 to 23. In the future phases, we're talking about the phase 1 and Oakland phase 2, that Dixie Highway extension is $35 million minimum, and then the M15 corridor is about $42 million. So we're talking about $100 million total project when it's all said and done.
When individual businesses or homeowners and everything hook up, is that a cost borne by them, or is it borne by the system as a whole?
It's their cost. So when they make a connection to the system, they're buying basically a share into the system based on their use. So a single family home would have one RU, and they would pay whatever cost per RU for connection would be. So in this case, we're estimating around $7,500.
That's traditional per connector. Got it. All right. So what, from a fiscal impact specifically to Oakland County, we mentioned Groveland, we mentioned the ORV park. What is the short-term cost to hook up those much larger entities, and then the estimated annual cost to the park system?
I cannot answer specific to the park system, but I can tell you that the connection charges are going to be based on the amount of debt that we carry. So if we carry less debt, we get more principal forgiveness. Those costs will be less, and we'll be able to pay off the debt sooner. Let me see if I can find the RU for Oakland Oaks. Their cost is going to be so much per RU, and I believe they have somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 RUs. So if you multiply that by the 7,000, that would be the connection charge plus the internal cost of connecting sewer within the campground. So we would extend along Dixie Highway, and then they have to do an extension internal to get it to their existing facilities. I hope I answered your question. I'm sorry.
So, I mean, okay, so we're looking upwards of, I mean, is that a couple million? No. $500,000 for the hookup, and then whatever the annual cost based on whatever the total debt service is to those individual systems. And then I guess, just the last thing, I think, $10 million to help make this project. I think I've talked to many individuals. Yes, I'm supportive of this project. I am struggling a little bit. We've got all sorts of infrastructure needs around the county. We've got other water infrastructure issues, lead service line replacement, all these types of things. And the bipartisan infrastructure bill, I think, is going to go a long way to help addressing all of these. From a policy perspective, I think it's a bit of a challenge, particularly when most of the population in Oakland County operates with a sewer system that has been borne by the ratepayers in those areas and help build this, the situation. And so to tell, another community that the same doesn't have to happen out here, I realize this stuff just gets more and more expensive over time, and the longer we delay, and I agree with, Jim, I highlighted that, not only are these septic tanks failing, a quarter that we estimate that across the board, Oakland County's home to more septic tanks than any other county in the state, so roughly 25,000 septic tanks, by that number, is probably failing all over the county. And what is the shared broad infrastructure way to help pay for this? And so and I've asked this question, I just don't know who the person that can get this answer. Is there a way to, out of this $10 million that we're talking about, is there a way to grant some of it and also loan some of it so that over some time in some deferred way, get to a point where the system can be generating revenue that can be added, even if it's on the very back end, with a deferment, 0% interest, that some dollars can get repaid so that these types of projects can happen again in the future. Do the numbers work? I guess.
One clarification I'd like to make is that all the sewer systems that are in service right now were constructed with federal dollars at some point or in some part in the 60s and 70s, which was subsidized by everybody else who pays into the system. So this is a very similar setup where we're taking federal dollars that are for infrastructure use and putting them to use for infrastructure to help build a system that doesn't exist. And that's exactly what we did with Evergreen Farmington and with Clinton. So the second part of the question is, we need the $10 million to proceed. If we don't get $10 million given to us in some way, this project can't happen, and we have to tell Genesee no. And there's no better way to serve this area with sewer in the future. If you want to give a loan, it just adds to the debt load going forward to make it more difficult to keep costs down for people who want to connect into the system. So really what we're trying to do is minimize the amount of debt up front, get us the connection we need into the system to have service going forward, and to do that in a cost-effective way for the people who are going to use the system in the future.
Will all the communities that can hook up to this drain be required to hook up, or is it by a choose your own adventure?
Typically with this sort of setup where you need the revenue, you're going to have an ordinance that requires people within 250 feet to make a connection to the sewer system. The communities are going to have some sort of a grandfather clause for, when folks move from their homes, single-family homes, then they would have to upgrade at that point just for older folks who don't have the resources. But generally, everyone's going to have to connect who has access to it.
And when do those ordinances get adopted? Is it when the project gets signaled and saying this is what's coming and whatever those provisions are?
I would imagine, as we're designing it, we'd probably be writing the ordinances.
I wanted to point out that both the ARP, when it was passed through the state legislature actually funding it, and the infrastructure bill coming will specifically mentioned mitigation of septic systems as something that's fundable. So this is, again, if we can do this, however it's done, we want to make sure that it's done in time for this to happen, because, you know, we talked about the extra costs. Really, the only solution other than this would be to build our own infrastructure to carry the sewage and a sewage treatment plant of our own. So those costs would be significantly higher to those communities, and be kind of devastating to try to do. And, you know, even the lakes that we're protecting, the parks, the recreational areas, the businesses, this is something that we're hoping that when this does come up, it's not going to be, you know, weighted down with those extra long-term debt. So if we can do this, and you know, we're mentioning the revolving funds that would be used. One of those ways of using of funding this is through that program. So we could get principal forgiveness on these loans as our grant source. So going forward, we're trying to make this as you know, least impact on the ratepayers as we can. And we're through, whether it's through the grants, whether it's through this process we're in right now, we're trying to make it so that it's not going to hit them too hard when it comes time to sign up for these for their service.
Commissioner Wiper.
I just had some of the similar questions about elective or mandatory hookups. And I know there'll be ordinances, but it's usually when people are failing. If it's around a lake, you might make it mandatory, but if it's usually if they're failing, then they have to, or changing owners. That was one question. And then we're counting on the principal forgiveness of the state revolving fund. Nobody has any doubt that that's going to happen. I mean, that program's always had principal forgiveness, hasn't it? We don't see that change in the future. I know we're counting on it.
Right. Well, it looks like what they've done in this current legislation by this legislature is saying that that's how it has to be done. So, you know, we want to make sure that this is done in the long-term interests of the communities. So, whether that's how it looks like it's going to be, most of that money will be distributed. So, again, this qualifies for that, and we're hoping to get that. Nothing's guaranteed. I mean, that's the whole thing. We can't guarantee that it's going to happen, but we have a really good track record of getting these kind of grants, and all of this qualifies within their systems.
And just follow up on, and we have no doubt that this is a unique opportunity in Genesee County. I mean, we don't see this, as Commissioner Nash said, to build our own treatment plant would be hundreds of millions, right? And then it would have to be different areas. I mean, that's what makes us unique, is the Genesee County opportunity.
Right.
And maybe we could use this as take a look at as a model and see if some of the same concepts could apply for the rest around the whole county. I know if that's Commissioner Woodward's concern is here we're spending $10 million of the ARPA money. Maybe we could look at this as a little model how we might be able to address some other areas. So I just asked if Commissioner Nash would do that.
We work with every community around for so many different things, from drains to erosion to all this stuff. So yeah, we have a great relationship with the communities. We're always willing to listen, find ways we can help them do these things. And again, this is something that we do. So I appreciate that thought.
Thank you.
All right, so we have Commissioner Markham, then Commissioner Charles.
Thank you.
Then Commissioner Cabell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everybody. I am in support of this project for a couple of reasons. First of all, it is the most cost-effective way to get this done. It makes sense. The opportunity's there. If we wait, it's an order of magnitude at least to do this at a later date. So I'm in support of it for that. But I do agree with my fellow commissioners. I'd like a better sense of how big a problem this is across Oakland County. What is our exposure to septic tanks across the county? I'd like a map that says we have 500 here and 300 there and so on. So in the future, we can start thinking in terms of how do we fix this? Because with the most lakes in Michigan and the most septic tanks in Michigan, this is a huge problem out there that we don't want to put on the backs of our residents in huge ways, but we all know it needs to be fixed, and it's not going to get better out in Commerce or Lyon Township or White Lake or all the other places we have these. So I will support this, but I would like to see an effort going forward to identify the problem as it exists across the county. Thank you.
I can briefly give you an example. Lower Pettibone Lake, which is upstream of Kent Lake in Kensington Park, they had, 5 or 6 years ago at least, 25 homes along the shore, all their septics were failing. So they ended up having to build a forced sewer that served all those all those residents, and it ended up costing about $1 million altogether. So the costs of these things can be significant. And again, the communities come to us when they have these kind of issues, and we try to help them develop them projects to deal with it. And we're going to be doing that in the future as we go. And I agree, we could look into this and give you more information. Although I will say, septic fields are regulated by the county health department, not by us. So we can find out more, but we don't really regulate them as a part of our duties.
Right.
Commissioner Charles.
Was that a follow-up to what he just said?
Well, it is a clarification. We actually don't know where all the septic tanks are. We know when they get repaired or when their permit was pulled to install them, but.
We've had this discussion.
Or if they're trying to build a bigger building on a septic tank that's not to code.
Fair, right, yes. So, we have some knowledge. We don't have all the knowledge.
Then it sounds like we have some work to do
There's a
to
lot of work to
get
do.
better
Yes, you're right.
informed.
You're right.
Good luck with that.
So positive.
Good morning, all. Fresh off of some new understanding and learning on my part, I heard the word ordinances, and it immediately made me think of special assessment, and you talked about grandfather clauses. So are those things typically city, village, township decisions in terms of special assessment districts and who would be grandfathered in?
So yeah, typically we're going to draft an ordinance for each of the townships to adopt. And so that would be the language that we would request them to adopt. And they're going to need to do that in order to show bonding agencies and to show us that they can make the payments.
Is there any risk? Is there any risk? What is that? Are we risk averse that local CVTs are not, or townships, as you put it, aren't interested in our ordinance recommendations? Or we do have the understanding that if we draft this ordinance, we do these things, that people will actually be happy to participate?
Yes. So for the most part, what's going to happen is if you're on a lake and your septic system fails in Brandon Township, right, you're going to call the health department. And if there's sewer available, they're going to tell you, you can't have a septic system. You need to connect to the sewer. If the sewer is nearby, then they're going to make them connect into it either. So it's going to be a coordination with the health department to make them aware of where we have sewer and to let them know to push people in that direction, in addition to the ordinances that we'll have in place that require it.
Yeah, this has been done in other communities. Exact same thing.
Thank you. And then
It's been done in other communities, exact same thing.
And then, Brian, back to grandfather clauses, because you talked about people who would basically be able to opt out. Does it happen to fall on the titles when people try to move? Where's the grassroots impact of this as far as people being able to move or buy or sell their homes?
Yeah, there's a lot of ordinances that have been passed that are time of sale type ordinances, where you could a person could apply and say either their poverty level or they have difficulties. The community may exempt them, but then they would also somehow record, and I'm not sure, I have to talk to attorneys on how that actually physically works, but they would record somewhere that they have to do this at the time of sale, and that would be the understanding. So I think that's the most effective way to do it. I was for a whole ordinance, everyone connect in, and then there's a number of houses along this that are really older houses with older folks in them that will be developed at some point into something different.
Right. And if I may add to that, what happens in a lot of cases is, let's say we approve this, and it goes in, but somebody put a septic field in last week. All right, it's got a life of 15 to 20 years. You're not going to ask them to tie in right away. So usually when we talk to the health department, if something has to be replaced, it's a requirement to tie in. And typically from a cost perspective, which is where the $7,500 comes from, it's around the same cost to put in a new septic field or to tap in. So you've got to pay either way. So if your septic field fails, you're paying one way or another. So the recommendation is you tap into the sewer line for roughly the same cost, hopefully somewhat a little less in some cases, definitely less than an engineered field to tap in.
Yeah.
So you're paying one way or another. So it's not an additional cost burden. Now, there might be some cases where you have some individuals or some homeowners that are at the poverty level, et cetera, that you can't pay. That's a different discussion, is how do they finance that? They may put it on their tax roll and pay it over years, and then when they have to pay it off before they sell the house or something along those lines. So they're not paying it all at once. Those options are out there for those homeowners.
Okay. Well, that is concerning to me. I appreciate it. It's still concerning because you said it's older residents. They potentially might be downsizing, moving, and it's going to put a little bit of a burden on them to be able to sell their home. With that, I mean, a good advice could help them in that process. So right now, I'm still undecided on this.
Well, let me add to that.
Yes.
I mean, when you have an SAD or example or something put onto your tax roll, you can't sell your house without it. It has to be paid off, so it would have to be part of the sales agreement.
Right.
That would be paid off.
This is true,
Yeah,
Mr.
so-
Spiz. I appreciate my colleague mentioning cost-effective in terms of it's a good time to take a bite of the apple because deferred maintenance can really add up over time. And then I just want to make sure I'm clear, Grand Blanc Township is providing $10 million all on their own? It's kind of bossy.
It's one of the negotiations that we have, yeah, it would be a loan. But they have to pay $10 million for their customers to connect, and then they're going to essentially loan some money to us, yes.
Thank you, Brian. Someone muted him. No, I'm kidding.
We got Commissioner Cavell, then we get Chairman Woodward for the second time.
Great timing, William, thanks. I was actually going to ask about Grand Blanc Township because I noticed that $10 million. Can you repeat what you just said?
Yeah, so they have to pay $10 million of the $33 million for their connection to the system because it's going to be extended through their community and they're going to have use of it. And then the rest of it is for Oakland County use. And they're going to potentially put up some funds to loan us to get the project done so that we can participate.
The $10 million that is in this document is a loan then that they've agreed to put up.
No. The $10 million that's in that document is what they have to pay towards the 33. We have to pay 10 plus some debt, right? And we don't know what that debt amount is yet. I think it's around 13 million. They were going to loan part of that 13 million up front for us to pay back through connection charges in the future. So the idea, we wanted to limit the amount that we were requesting from the county, from Oakland County to 10 million. And so we were looking for help from Genesee and from Grand Blanc Township to offset some of that cost so we can make this happen now.
And so their $10 million contribution will be, though, in the form of a loan.
They were going to contribute 10 million cash for the project for their cost, plus another possibly $10 million to help make the project happen as a loan.
As a loan, okay, got it. So they're paying 20 million and we have to pay 10 million and the other 3 is coming from somewhere else for this first phase.
The numbers are all very sloppy at this point.
Sure,
I'm
I
talking
get that.
rough numbers.
Yeah, okay. So, well, I was gonna ask then about Grand Blanc Township, them contributing that 10, they're actually contributing in total then 20 million?
Potentially, like I said, we're in contract discussions and that's been something we've discussed.
Gotcha.
They're fronting
so-
the money for us, we're paying them back.
Right.
So it costs us 21 million, we're only gonna pay 10 million up front. They're gonna loan us the other million, and that's the first thing the communities have to pay back.
Okay. Why could,
Correct, yeah.
why could
And that's why we're trying not to incur additional debt with the 10 million, but we're asking you to be a loan because we're already gonna have to pay Grand Blanc Township and Genesee back for this loan that they're already granting us.
Understood. Okay, so the granting $10 million is a nice to have, but a loan of $10 million could also make this a feasible project.
I think it makes it less feasible.
Okay. Oh,
The
sorry.
debt burden is so high, it makes it difficult to get people to connect at the cost that we'd have to charge.
Okay. Have you kind of gamed out what that cost would be? Because one of my questions was to follow up with Commissioner Spiz's point about considerations for people who are poor. So if it's about $7,500 to hook up with this $10 million grant, what would it be if it was a loan or some part of it was a loan? Also assuming that's feasible, right? I don't mean to speak out of turn.
I don't have the numbers in front of me. I just know it's going to cost more. And like Commissioner Spiz had mentioned, a septic system somewhere in the neighborhood of $7,000, $8,000 to replace. We want to be under that. And what we looked at initially is if we didn't ask for anything from Oakland County, that number gets higher. It gets up to around 10,000. It makes it a lot less affordable for people to connect in.
So then wait, and forgive me because I use city septic stuff, but to connect in, what you were just saying is that can be an SAD, so it goes on your taxes, or there can be poverty considerations or lower income or fixed income considerations, so that it can be paid off over time. And there's also like a lien perhaps that could be placed on your house so that when you sell it, you just get 10 grand less? Are these all things that are possible?
So I think we're talking about just a couple of houses.
Okay.
These probably are going to be, they have been rezoned or they're master plan different than what they are now, and they'll probably be replaced with some sort of a development. So hopefully that clarifies, because it's not like we're putting, older people out of their homes or putting them in debt when they sell their homes. It was a way to help those couple people until their sites get developed. Is really kind of what we're talking about.
Gotcha. And then the new development that would result from this, people would just, when they buy the house, there'd be a $10,000 or $7,000 additional fee because, right, so the house is $300,000, now they're paying $307,000.
Yeah, and that's the same in every other community. So if you buy a house in Novi, that connection charge, so that new house is already in what you're paying for that house.
Yep.
Well, so then what functionally then for the people we represent in Oakland County is the necessity of the grant versus a loan, because if most of the people that will be like tying into this are going to be like buying a new property, so if you can get a mortgage for $250,000, you can get a mortgage for $260,000, right? If that's how a lot of the cost.
If I may.
Yeah, what am I missing? Sorry. Yeah.
If I may.
Yes, Commissioner Spitz,
When
yeah.
you get a loan, let's say
Yeah.
you're buying a new house,
Yeah.
will the bank let you get a loan with zero down? In most cases, no.
Okay.
They want to make sure you're putting some money in. This is the same thing. Genesee County's not going to work with us if we're not willing to come to the table with a little bit of money. That's really what this $10 million is.
And the reality is with a loan, they're not, the mortgage company's not going to give you a loan for more than the house is worth. So if it's $250,000, they're not going to give you $260 because there's a $10,000 assessment, so you can only get $250.
Okay.
Right, so I know what you said is like they would just get $260, just so, because I just bought a house, so I know this stuff. Right, so that's, yeah, just to add to that, you can't take more out than the house is worth.
Right, but if you
Usually
have,
80%.
Yeah,
but also if you have to put stuff down, then the bank just naturally wouldn't do. Anyways, okay.
Yeah.
So, understood. So then my other big question was related to Grand Blanc. Holly, Brandon, Ortonville, and Groveland put in 200,000, right?
Yes.
So, why are they not putting in more, like how Grand Blanc is?
So Grand Blanc has existing customers, and they have a huge water and sewer fund that they use to make capital improvements. We're building a brand new system that has no customers and no funds.
Got it. But the cities though that are going to benefit from this don't want to invest in it.
They invested the $200,000. These communities only received a couple $100,000, like under $500,000. And as this has gone on, they committed initially they wanted to put in more, but as this went on, there was more need related to COVID and things that were happening with these communities. And they've had to use a lot more of those funds for other things than this project in the meantime. So that's kind of where we're at with that.
Okay, understood. And then the last thing I just wanted to ask, and this kind of echoes what Commissioner Markham was saying, is I know these are about failed septic systems, but taking, equity into account, doesn't Southfield have a bunch of failed septic systems? Is there a plan afoot to address them? Is that in the WRC catchment area?
Sewers are already within an existing service district, so the community could do an SPD and connect the sewer into those subdivisions, and then they'd be able to make the connection and have sewer. There's no new system that has to be created to serve these areas.
Right.
Southfield.
Yeah, but we don't need to grant you $10 million to do something that you could do with a $10 million loan that would cost the future ratepayers more. So we don't have to do anything, but just taking equity into account. In Southfield, there's a bunch of people that have had failed septic for years that aren't coming before us to seek a grant or get that grant that I've seen. So is that part of your conversations ongoing about working on failed septics in the county?
So those are in a city, and the city is responsible for their water and sewer system individually. And we're happy to assist, and we're more than. But I think I can't discount enough that building a brand new system to serve an area is a lot more costly than extending a sewer to serve an area that's currently not served. And the communities, that would be on them to do that.
Which then brings to mind, if it's less expensive to do something to help the people in Southfield, let's talk offline, I guess, about making that happen soon. Because I see the value in this and appreciate this, because people should have access to clean septic and all that and sewer service. But also, let's not forget the other people that often are unheard, like the people in Southfield that have had failed septic for years. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Chairman Woodward.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So on the state revolving fund, is there a cap? Well, like, anytime we've applied for those funds, have we always got those funds, or sometimes we haven't?
I'm sorry, I couldn't.
I'm sorry. The SRF, when we've applied for, have we generally always been able to get those? I know that we've been very successful. Does that mean that we get them when we apply for them because our projects are sound and make a lot of sense?
Yes, yeah, anything that we can apply for construction for infrastructure dollars through SRF, we're doing. It's a great opportunity for us.
Right. Is there a cap on how much you can get out of that fund?
I don't know that there is. Jim, have you heard if there's a cap?
I don't believe there is. No, I think this would fit well within that. So I think, again, the revolving fund is a loan program. I think it's 2.5%, might be 2% right now. I forget. But what is coming through from the from the rescue plan is basically principal forgiveness for those loans. So what we'd be looking for is getting those loans. You have to qualify for them, go through the process of getting a bond, and then if we apply, or during that process we apply for principal forgiveness, and then they can tell us how much they forgave. We got one from for Pontiac just recently for lead service line replacement. That was a $5 million principal forgiveness. So. It's what's going to be. I think most of the drivers of the grants will be through that program. So we have a really good record of getting those loans. Really, very good record of getting those loans. It's the principal forgiveness that we're going to be applying for.
Sir, which I think sounds great. I mean, I guess my question is, and I'm just trying to figure out how to juxtapose like the $10 million, the opportunity cost, and figure out how to get the biggest runway to do the most things with. So follow my, calculus here. Is there a way to get to go to the SRF for this $10 million? Oakland County commits to the debt service on it for 30 years, which at that amount is, interest is what, $2.5 million a year?
The problem is timing. We need a decision this month for Genesee, or else we can't participate. And we can't go through the SRF process until it starts in November, and then it's a several month process to get funded.
Okay, that makes sense. But there's, between any negotiated contract, is there time to kind of figure that out? I mean, like, listen, we will find the 10 million. Like, is that enough? Full faith and credit of Oakland County, like, we will find the 10 million? I mean, I guess how to structure is the bigger issue. And then related, and Brian, I mean, I know you said you had some numbers and estimate, and I realize there's like some estimates, and it's hard to calculate everything. Is there a way to calculate what, with a $10 million grant, like, this is what the end user hookup and all the costs are? If it was $5 million with a $5 million loan with some deferment 25 years down the road, what does that look like? I guess over the scope of everything, over that period of time, and the numbers in which, the profitability to be able to pay off additional debt service, it seems fairly nominal.
I guess my goal today is to get it committed. However I can get it committed is really what I'm looking for today. And if we want to talk loan, we can talk about that, but please give me a commitment so I can proceed with contract discussions.
Any other discussion?
Fair.
Any
Be part of the appropriation process then, rather than this linking the money?
Well, I think it's important to send a message like we are going to come up with the money. Like, let's figure out a way to make it work. And it's like, and I think this is really important to the residents and business of the areas. We're going to figure this out. What I am toying with, trying to figure out, like, how do we do this in a way that also helps us be able to address long-term additional drain infrastructure issues, that especially in those areas and those communities that, and Commissioner Nash reminds me, there's certain communities if you they just can't pay, and how do we address those, whether that's redirecting to help more people hook up faster so it generates more revenue quicker. So
one of the things, Royal Oak Township is another example of where we went to the state and we received principal forgiveness for a disadvantaged community. And for disadvantaged communities, principal forgiveness is going to be awesome in the infrastructure bill. It's going to work really well, and we're going to get lots of things done in those areas. The problem is, I can't get principal forgiveness at this point for this project.
Under any circumstance, even with if the bipartisan infrastructure money coming in?
Yeah, but that doesn't happen until next year, right?
I get that.
I'm in a tough spot where, and trust me, I didn't want to come to you guys and ask for money. This hasn't been fun. But
I get it. You shouldn't. Should always come and ask.
This is one of those things where, as an engineer, I see everything lining up, and I say to myself, this has to happen because there's not going to be another opportunity for this to happen. And so, in order for me to move forward and do what I need to do, I need a commitment that you guys are going to participate in some way, somehow, and then I can go and start having discussions with Genesee and start negotiating an agreement. We can work on all these terms of how this is all going to fly.
You got any discussion?
Well, it's not even discussion. I can support this as long as that we, look at the way to stretch these dollars as much as possible. And at some point, it might be like, maybe that's not even feasible. That can't work to make this project successful. So as long as that process, and since this is the assignment, that there's a window of time between now and then to figure out how that is done, how that's structured. Let's be creative, because if there is a way, we're going to make this money available. We're going to commit this money. At some point, it's going to be needed and collected. That if the SRF can come in, if there's a way to get debt, if there's a way to structure a deal that leverages less of the 10 million and can actually dedicate it to more drain stuff, let's figure that out.
Any other discussion? A couple things is, I appreciate your care and concern for the better than 50 individuals out there and letting them, to have their time till they move out before costing them anything. So I feel that's our responsibility to take care of the people who brought us where we're at today. Also, if we did a loan, it would have to come out of the general fund, correct? You can't use ARP money for that. So that would be a little issue that we would have. So we'd have to have it coming out of our general fund where we have the ARP money that's...
Or revenue loss of ARP money.
Okay.
Yeah. There's a way to figure it out.
All right. And on this, I'm fully supportive of this. Is good jobs, and it makes sense for the money it costs. And I'm all for building the sewer system too, right? our own sewage plant. I'm a construction guy, right? So let's keep building. But I'm 100% in favor of this. I'm going to vote for this, and if anybody else has no discussion, I'll prompt the vote, call the roll, or call the vote.
We have 8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
And then if anybody has any questions for Slacken staff over here, if it just, I don't know, they could stay if they want, but I don't want to make them stay, right?
We'll head out, and I mean,
Yeah.
especially with the ARPA stuff, it's not really so much our area of expertise, but we have a policy nerd in our office who'd be happy to answer any of the regular details around that money.
Thank you. And thank you for joining us today.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you, guys.
Alexa, can you give me your card?
Take a second, if anybody has to.
Thanks.
All right, so if everybody's ready, we'll move on to the next agenda item. The next agenda item is Airport Land Lease Addendum, Midfield Management LLC. We need a motion.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Spiz, seconded by Commissioner Cabell. Good morning, Ms. Bush. We can't hear you.
Can't hear you.
Whoever's in that little corner just has
Nope.
to be right.
Yeah. Space. Cabell. No, we're still,
Screen.
I think, Cheryl, if there are other applications, Zoom or Teams that you've used, that you want to make sure it's turned off because audio can't run through all of them at the same time. I learned that yesterday.
Only 2.5 years in, huh?
right.
I always was using one application.
I just learned that today, right now. So, yeah.
She can also dial in.
Dial in, yeah.
Can we go on to the next item while she's figuring this
Sure,
out?
sure. Yeah, we can move on, while Ms. Bush is figuring out, we can move on to the next agenda item. So the next agenda item is fiscal year 2023 County Veteran Service Fund Grant Application Authorization. Need a motion. Moved by Commissioner Charles, seconded by Commissioner Wiper. Good morning.
Good morning. Hopefully you can hear me.
We got you.
All right, good. This is requesting approval to apply for the fiscal year 23 County Veteran Service Fund grant. This funding is provided through the Michigan Veterans Affairs Agency, and they have approved us for $255,319. And we have discussed this with my leadership, and the areas that we would like to allocate in the application are for a transportation program. We've worked with SMART. We've gotten a interlocal agreement with them, which we just executed fairly recently, and we're just kicking off that program. We just sent out the press release, so we want to continue that program. We feel like we've done all the groundwork to get it going, and we'll be able to kick it off starting basically October 1st of 2022. We also want to continue our highly successful Veterans Resource Fairs. We've been having those throughout the county, one a month, occasionally 2 times a month. And those have been very successful. We're allocating funds to provide Meyer cards, $50 Meyer cards as an incentive for individuals, or for veterans or dependents to attend those resource fairs. And we're also going to be using funds to purchase food boxes through Forgotten Harvest. We also want to allocate funds for marketing, again, to kind of promote these programs that we have. We're also going to do some veterans-owned business entrepreneur workshops to encourage veterans who are interested in starting their own business or currently have a business that they are interested in increasing or improving. We've got our first one of those that we use our fiscal year 22 funds set for tomorrow, actually, at OCC a campus in Southfield. So we're excited about that. We have 75 individuals that signed up for that first one. So we're thinking that this is going to be something very successful going forward. The last item we have is outreach needs, just some items that we need in order to be successful when we're doing our outreach, some technology items such as signature pads, portable scanners, and printers. So I'd be happy to answer any questions anybody has.
Any discussion? Commissioner Wiper, then Commissioner Woodward.
So, I mean, this starts in October. This is going to help you continue all these programs that you think are working well for the veterans, right?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you first, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry. So this is for October of this year, starts, but it's going to, you're going to continue the programs that you're doing right now that are working, that you think are working for the veterans, and you're going to continue them, right?
That's correct. These are all programs that we've essentially started. It took us a while this fiscal year because they're really new startups, some of them, and we want to continue that momentum and starting with fiscal year 23, October 1st, continue those programs.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Commissioner Woodward.
Yeah, I mean, Commissioner Weipert's, I mean, this is a state grant, expanded, and I know, and I really want to applaud Garth. I mean, I'm really hyper zoned in on the veteran transportation issue. I'm just really glad to see that getting off the ground. I know it was, I mean, COVID created some like stalling, I mean, well, not stall, it just wasn't feasible to launch a program, so I'm very excited. On the marketing front, do you have like any metrics in terms, I mean, I'm just, and this is the question that I continue to struggle with, is that there's a finite number of veterans and their supporters. Like, how do we get that list? Someone has that list somewhere. That is it better to directly market to them versus kind of this more broadcast marketing? I mean, in terms of the people who are coming to the office, do you have some sort of evaluation of impact of what radio, billboard, digital, like these more broadcast things have accomplished?
We have different means that we're using to try and make sure we hit everybody. We do have a direct mailing list that we do use that we had to purchase from a third party, and we use that for direct mailing purposes, but we try to make sure with the digital billboards, with the social media, with the direct mailing, radio advertising that we get across a broad group. We are kicking off, we just signed our agreement for this year's, so you'll probably be hearing our radio ads and seeing our billboards now. The last time we did the marketing, we saw a fairly substantial increase, and I believe it was about a 16% increase in contacts to our offices based on what we felt was that marketing campaign we did compared month to month before it started, then once it started. So we're hoping for a similar impact going forward.
Great. Thanks.
Any other discussion? I just want to say, Garth, I appreciate what you do. I've talked to a lot of veterans in our community in everybody's district, and they appreciate what you and your team are doing. So thank you. If there's any,
I appreciate the support of the Board of Commissioners and our county executive. We've always been able to get the support that we've needed for any of these programs, so I appreciate that.
thank you. So if there's no other discussion, could you call the vote, prompt the roll, whatever? I forget. I'm trying, Commissioner Charles, I'm trying.
Kicking and screaming.
Markham?
I'm a yes.
We have 8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
So now we'll go back to the second agenda item that was on there, airport lease, land lease addendum, Midfield Management LLC. We need a motion to move it again. Motion by Markham, seconded by Cavell. Good morning.
Good morning. Can you hear me this time?
We have you.
Okay, great. I'm sorry for the inconvenience. Good morning, everyone. I have an airport land lease addendum with Midfield Management. This is an addendum to a lease that we entered into back in 2013. The purpose of the addendum is to add some additional acreage, 3.44 acres specifically, bringing them to a new total of just under 17 acres here at Oakland County International. It also extends their term for 20 years, so their new land lease will expire in 2042. It'll bring an additional $43,406 of rent in annually, and that can be adjusted every 2 years. So it's received the approval of the departments, and there is no budget amendment required at this time.
Any discussion on that? Seeing none, prompt a vote.
One moment. Okay. You have 8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Now we have our next agenda item, which is with Oakland County University for partnership in performing research and services related to the achievement of sustainability throughout Oakland County. We need a motion. Moved by Commissioner Charles, seconded by Commissioner Woodward. Oh, I'm sorry. The with threw me off when it said with. It started with with. Good morning. Sorry.
Good morning. My name is Erin Quattel. I'm the Environmental Sustainability Officer for Oakland County. And I'm going to quickly just give a background of how this all came to be, and then we can have a discussion about this. But prior to me starting last October, there was a conversation between Oakland University and our Deputy County Executive, Hillary Chambers, about formalizing a partnership between Oakland University and Oakland County. And so in those conversations, and then after coming on board, we talked about different ways that we could partner. One of the things that Oakland University is particularly interested in is sustainability, because they are looking at sustainability practices for their campus as well. And so they would like to partner with us in any way, whether that be supporting us, maybe there's an opportunity to co-create some resources or research. And so that's really the premise of this. In the negotiations and contract that we went back and forth with, which has been reviewed by both parties and both legal teams, we looked at a moderate monetary support for Oakland University so that we can utilize their expertise with their staff, grad students, and undergraduate students. That is in the amount of $100,000. It can be reviewed and renewed at any time. We kind of left it open and broad to make sure that it fits both parties. And I think that there was one more thing I was going to mention, and I apologize, it just left my mind. So perhaps I'll think about it in a moment. But that's the premise of the proposal in front of you today.
Thank you. Any discussion? Commissioner Space.
I just have a question. From a scope perspective, going back to one of our public comments, it says that you will approve the scope. Is there anything out there that says that it should be reviewed by the Board of Commissioners or somebody in the executive office or somebody outside of that from a scope perspective? What is intended to be within the scope there?
Sure, that's a good question. So we have talked about a few different types of ideas. It's very common for communities and municipalities to have formal partnerships with higher education institutions. And so some of the things that we had discussed were research programs such as air quality monitoring or water quality monitoring, making sure it aligns with the county objectives to, as we serve our communities. And so really it's a very similar basis to research or other programs you would see with other higher ed, like we have partnerships with the University of Michigan and Michigan State University. It's those types of programs. The other thing that we were talking about too, and something that actually really resonated with me after our meeting that we had was, using the talent that we have here in Oakland County, using the talent that we have within our community partners, and really thinking about how we can progress with, a variety of different innovations. And so thinking about maybe climate action, some sort of sustainability programming. I know that that they're very interested, in particular in electric vehicle infrastructure, and that has been a big discussion even within our economic development department. So it's those types of items. We didn't finalize a scope and didn't want to put it in necessarily in the agreement because of the flexibility that we wanted to have if there's a new technology we wanted to try out or pilot and that sort of thing. So.
Thank you. Commissioner Spiz, you good?
I guess relative to scope, is it something that you would be willing to share with the Board of Commissioners once it comes in?
Absolutely. I think that the reason why we had it in that approval process is just to have an ease of the agreement between Oakland University and Oakland County. I'm happy to provide any sort of content or update or presentation that the board would like to see.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none, prompt the vote, please.
We have 8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion carries. Thank you so much, and thank you for
very
joining.
much. Have a good day.
Now we have our next agenda item, which is facilities planning, Children's Village Complex Life Safety Enhancements. Good morning. We need to move it. Moved by Commissioner Spiz, seconded by Commissioner Markham. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning, how are you? Good morning.
Best day of my life. How about you?
Same. I'm Jason Warner. I'm the manager of planning and engineering with facilities management here at the county. Ed Joss, the director of facilities management, is with me, and Barb Hankey and Heather Calcaterra are online from Public Services and Children's Village. The Children's Village Campus Life Safety Project is designed to increase the life safety aspects of the 8 buildings in the village. It includes bringing the buildings up to current building codes. Many of them were built in the mid-'60s. So we've worked with the Waterford Fire Department and developed plans to increase the fire exit paths, the lighting, emergency lighting, door swings, hardware, and aspects like that. Those buildings are occupied, most of them 24 hours a day. The fire department has reviewed all of our plans and is in agreement with what we have proposed. The project estimate for this project is just over $1 million, $1,013,599, and we would be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Commissioner Spiz, then Commissioner Cavell, then
Thank you,
Commissioner
Mr.
Woodward.
Chair. I mean, having reviewed the plans and seen the details for this, I fully support it. So thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Cavell.
I'm just curious, in part of the budget breakdown, FM Endo, Maintenance Division, Architectural, and then Building and Safety, Architectural, is that like a transfer between departments for the work? Like, that looks to me like what IT does, is like being and is that the same sort of setup?
Yeah, it's in our internal facilities maintenance and operations and safety division actually performing the work. But, those costs have to be accounted for. We account for everything in these budgets. It's all inclusive, like we bring everything to the table. So.
Gotcha. So it's like single, is that called single source revenue contract, or where like the IT, right? They have to do a lot of transfers between one department to the next to IT? Same
Correct.
Sort of thing? Okay.
Yes.
Yep. Thanks.
All right, Commissioner Woodward.
So I certainly support all of these things. I couldn't tell, does this make sure that all the alarms on doors work?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So that's a good thing. And is this also the fence around the outside?
This is separate from that.
That's separate from that. We'll get to the fence.
That'll be the next item, yeah.
All right. And so I guess when do we start these enhancements? Have we begun them yet, or are we in
Well, some enhancements have been done, but these are the additional ones. This additional funding, we need to finish them up, but Jason can comment on the timing of it.
Yeah, so the project has been bid already to annually pre-bid vendors. So pending approval in these meetings, the project will be set up with our fiscal services department, then we'll be able to schedule work immediately after that.
Right, and we're doing this all, with nothing with internal. These are all outside vendors that we're bringing in?
Other than the FMNO group in building safety. So our internal FMNO staff will have some work to do, and then the building safety group, which falls under Homeland Security, will also have some work with card access and some of the building intrusion alarms and that type of work.
Got it. Thanks.
Commissioner Charles and Commissioner Spitz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is perhaps for Ed, but it's regarding the initial, of course, I tapped out of there. Okay, back where I need to be. I think it was draft resolution part. So it says whereas to accomplish this task, JFR architects were solicited. What is that process like? Where do you, is there a hat of names and you just, JFR architects, how do we, it seems like that's already been done and that's in this resolution. So what's the process there?
Yeah, so JFR Architects is one of our annual vendors, one of our annual architects. We have a few of them under annual contract. They go through the same RFP and bidding process that any of our other contracts are. So in this, Jason can maybe comment on what happened in this instance, but I can tell you what happens on a regular basis. If the project is not, so large that it exceeds the threshold of, I believe, the 250,000, right, that was set forth by resolution by I think this committee, then we take a look at using our annual vendors, and in many cases we will ask each of the annual vendors to provide a proposal for the scope of work that we need. There are some instances where if, let's say we have 3 annual architects and we have 2 of them loaded down with work, we may ask, in this case JFR, for their proposal, and if it's fair and in line, we'll have them do the work. And a lot of times we'll take a look at what their specialty is too, and what their institutional knowledge may be with the facilities. In this case, JFR is a smaller firm. It's actually a one-man firm, and he really is an expert in code-related projects. I believe he used to work with Lansing and the state of Michigan for helping develop the Michigan Building Code. So he very much was a very good fit for helping us evaluate the Children's Village campus and making the code improvements that we needed.
And do we know when that annual, you refer to them as annual vendors, when does that come about? When do we make those finalities?
Yeah, so they vary. I would have to look at our list of contracts and find out when that contract expires. But, facilities management has a long list of contractors. I don't know offhand, but the list could be as long as 100 for everything from architecture, engineering to, the dogs that come on campus and scare the geese away, right? So we don't have goose mess all over. So and everything in between, and they all vary, right? But the architect contracts, typically, like we bid them out and then we'll award to 3 different architects all at the same time. And then those contracts are usually set up for 3 years, can be extended to 5. After 5, we have no choice. We have to go to rebid.
Okay. All of that sounds fair and appropriate, I guess, through the chair, and I'm glad that the ex officios are in the building as well, is that, to quote, he, so I figured it was a he, to have a lot of familiarity with code, it is probably likely you would be familiar because you tend to get the jobs. And so it is imperative that we find a way of that 100 that he spoke about. How many of them are minority businesses? How many of them are owned by women? Probably nil. So it's great that we have policies and procedures, but I just want to make sure when the time comes up that we do better at spreading the love to underrepresented business owners. And that's all I've got. Thank you.
I will comment, and I don't know if this helps or not, but one of the annual architects that we do have is female-owned.
Great.
And that firm is working on other projects for us, just not this one.
That's good to know.
And we are making a conscious effort. We are working with our purchasing group, moving forward to see that our vendors are falling more in line with the county's new core values.
That's all I got.
Commissioner Spitz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just took another run at the project estimate, and I noticed the contingency. And I noticed there's an extra line under contingency that I had normally seen before, which is a 20% inflation contingency, which, based on material costs and everything else going on, I somewhat understand that. So first question is that a normal thing we're going to see in all the future estimates? Is there going to be an extra contingency line for inflation?
Yes, so we have instructed everyone in facilities management to include an additional 20% inflationary contingency for all of our projects. Until either we see things settle down as far as like labor and material costs, but that's all we can do at this point to try to cover what's happening with the market right now. We cross our fingers and hope that we don't have to dip into that, but what we want to try to avoid is coming to you or the other committees and the board and asking for funding to fund projects and then finding out months in that we need more money and have to come back, right? A lot of the proposals that we're receiving from contractors, they're only holding their prices for 30 days. In some cases, they're only holding their prices for 7 days, and that's a huge challenge for us because, as you know, this process to bring these projects in front of the committees, get approval, go to the full board, work with purchasing to award a contract, that process takes weeks. So we're constantly chasing, right, these price updates, and in most cases, they're price increases, right?
I appreciate that, and I appreciate you not want to come back in front of the board because that doesn't always go well. Ask for more money, especially from my perspective.
As much as we like you, we prefer not to have to come back here again.
Before you go, Dave, second question is, since it says 20%, I'm assuming the standard contingency is 20%, correct? Isn't that normal?
It depends on the project. Typically, we use a 15%.
15%.
A 15% scope in construction contingency. Now, when we work with contractors like construction managers or subcontractors, typically their numbers will include contingency as well. That might be 5 or 10%. We put our owner's contingency of 15% on top of that, and then this 20% contingency is on top of that to deal with what we're dealing with in the market.
All right, so that drives my other question. I just did a quick math. That somehow that doesn't make 20%, more like 25% for both. It's like 24 something. So I'm just wondering, I didn't know if I was missing something that wasn't included in there that added up to a higher number?
Yeah, we can check that number if you'll allow us to, and then get back with you on.
Because it's only going to go lower. Because if it's 20%, it's going to be lower than what that number is. 20% is about 138.
Yeah, and it may be just where that line is represented in this project estimate. The 20% a lot of times is. I hear you that you're saying that it should be lower, but just so everybody's aware that 20% in a lot of cases is just applied to the construction and not all the other like owners costs. So we'll look at that.
I did the math for both. I did just construction and added the miscellaneous in there too.
Yeah.
But it's still higher than 20%.
Understood. Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
So I expect it to be below $1 million.
We hope so.
If you have to use contingency.
We hope so.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other discussion? Commissioner Woodward?
Yeah, and I think the point that was raised about how quickly, the bids are being only held for a small period of time. I had a small home construction project, and I was like shocked. They said, you have 7 days. This price is good for 7 days, and I've never experienced that before, and I can relate. It might be worth having a conversation for grabbing the best price when we can and figure out a way to accelerate some stuff, particularly in this time where material costs are what it is, whether that's like empowering the Economic Development Committee to have a pot of dollars that it can authorize so that we're not taking 2 weeks. But if it's going to save me $100,000, $250,000, we'll bring everybody back like on a drop of a hat, right, everyone? Yeah. So
Yes, sir.
Faster?
I think I've been accused of doing things too fast. So, but yeah, I think it particularly if we're chasing like the lowest price, like I know that we got a process that we want to go through and we want to make sure that we have the appropriate due diligence and all this other type of stuff. But if it's chasing a good price in the moment, particularly in this window of time that we're in, let's get creative. Maybe there's a set of money that can be released to be able to do that, and then make it work on the back end or something.
And I do appreciate that comment, because one of the reasons I want to bring up the 20% inflation, so everybody's aware. I think everybody's aware, but I wanted to make it a point, make sure everybody's aware that we have issues out there, from resources to materials, et cetera, that are continuing to go up on a regular basis, and in some cases are unpredictable of what the numbers are going to come in at, because it could change tomorrow, based on flow. Or based on supply.
I think it's a good point, because when we had a conversation, Spiz and I, with this team, you explained to us before you would get a guarantee of a length. Now it's like 30 days, is it? Or is it less than that?
It varies.
Yeah.
I can tell you that on this project here, that if we weren't able to get this item on this agenda, we would have missed the window for when they were holding their pricing, and then we would have had to go out to bid again.
Right.
Which that process takes time, and then, we would have been back here like probably 2 months from now, hoping that we can get the agenda item through, or else it's just a nonstop.
Yeah.
No,
I just wanted to explain that you guys are doing good due diligence and getting this done, and contractors aren't given as much guarantee lengthy anymore. It's quick service, so.
Very challenging, yeah.
Any more, Commissioner Wiper had some discussion.
This is probably our first one, or most recent one with the inflation. On this one, can we track it? You're going to start this project right away. Can you, maybe in a month or two, give us a memo on what this turned out to be? We can get that normally, but highlight it and send it to us?
Yeah, sure can. Yeah.
I'd just like to see how this one turns out.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, call a prompt vote, please.
Did you do that math in your head?
I did it first.
He's an engineer.
Reconfirmed it with you look at it.
You have 8
He's
yeas,
been
0
engineering
nays.
for 100 years.
Motion carries. Thank you so
Do the
much.
math in his head.
Now we have our next agenda item, which is facilities planning, facilities engineering's resolution, Children's Village, security enhancement, fencing, and gates. Need a motion. Moved by Commissioner Markham, seconded by Commissioner Cavell. Good morning again.
Good morning again. This project here is to add a permanent fence around the entire Children's Village campus. The campus is roughly 80 acres, and this is around 5,600 lineal feet of fence. This project also includes pedestrian-controlled gates at both drives into the village, and pedestrian gates across all walkways to control pedestrian traffic in and out of the complex, as well as vehicle traffic. This project estimate of $2,300,000. It also includes all site work and electrical work, card readers, cameras, anything associated with that. Barb Hankey and Heather are also with us today to answer any questions you may have on policies and procedures for the project.
Sure. Any discussion? Commissioner Spiz.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I'd like that, just for everybody's information, can we get an understanding of why we need to put this fence in? I think Barb or Heather might be able to answer that based on some of the state law changes.
Good morning. Can everybody hear me?
We got you.
All right. So Children's Village is a licensed child caring institution. And so because of that, we must follow rules that are established by the Division of Child Welfare Licensing, and we refer to them as DCWL. They have been working on rule revisions probably for about 1.5 to 2 years now. And so during that process, we knew that there were some changes coming specifically related to things like truancy, seclusion, and physical restraint. And so although we weren't aware of the specific rule changes until actually June 1st, we knew that we were going to have to make some changes. Previously, if a young person would attempt to leave our campus, we were able to chase them. And we would follow them, sometimes even into the community, try to maintain a visual, contact law enforcement, and then, of course, try to bring them back. During conversations with DCWL over the last couple of years, it became very clear to us that it was no longer safe for us to do that. One, as we run after a child, they run faster, right? So by us pursuing a youth, we're potentially forcing them further away from Children's Village. Secondly, the rule changes actually prohibit certain things. So as of June 1st, the rules were rewritten, and I believe you actually have a handout that contains an excerpt from the licensing rules. So effective November 1st, in child caring institutions, physical restraint is prohibited except for those that are outlined under something called emergency restraint. And so the use of emergency restraint is really only allowed, and I'm going to read from the rules here, when all other interventions in the agency's crisis prevention and intervention plan and the youth's individual safety and calming plan have been utilized but fail to protect the youth or others from unanticipated or severely aggressive behavior that places the youth or others at serious threat of violence or injury. So essentially, we're not able to use physical management as a response to truancy to bring youth back. Also, our location is right on the corner of Telegraph. So when our young people run, they don't generally stop and look both ways. They run right into traffic. So for a lot of reasons, this makes sense in terms of safety, security, as well as compliance with our licensing rules.
Any other
And if I can add to that too, and Heather and Barb, correct me if I'm wrong, but it also helps with outsiders that don't belong in the village.
Right.
You know, we put a fence along a portion of Telegraph because pedestrians that walk down Telegraph that want to get to someone on, you know, the west side of Telegraph in Waterford would use the village as a shortcut. And I know that the village would constantly be radioing their folks to run out into the middle of the campus and find out who the stranger is that's walking through, right, the middle of campus, because the residents up there are outside a lot. They're on the playground, they're, you know, walking from building to building, they're walking to the school, so on and so forth, so.
Yeah. Any other discussion? Commissioner Spitz for a second time.
I need to ask $1 million question. Any way to reduce the $1.9 million fence in cost?
So I will say this, and then I will let Barb and Heather comment. We did vet a few different options, at least 3, and the type of fence that we're using, we feel, and Heather and Barb and their team feel is the appropriate type of fence for this application, right? We need it to be secure, but we also don't want to create an environment that looks like a prison, right? We did look at some less expensive options, which would allow some of the existing fence to stay in place. But that existing fence is a chain link fence that's very easy to climb and is only 6 feet high. And so what we did was we looked at simply trying to add an additional couple of feet to the fence that's there, and possibly put a kickback on it, right, where it goes up and it kicks back so people can't get over it as easy. Well, as it turned out, and Jason, correct me if I'm wrong, to do that, it was actually more expensive than actually just putting in new fence, right? There are some cases where, you know, if the fence pole is only 6 feet tall, we need an 8-foot pole, and you got to take the old ones out and put them in. And then with talking with the staff from Children's Village, they felt that you know, if we're going to spend this much money to secure the campus, that this was the appropriate way to do it. So I'm not sure that answers your question, but I do want everybody to know that we did look at several options. We vetted them, and this seemed to be the best bang for our buck.
Thank you.
Commissioner Wiper.
And you use the word prison. I mean, we call it Children's Village, and there's all kinds of different levels of kids there. There's truants, and there's people that might be on their way to prison forever, right? Murders. So it's nice that for mental health wise, it's nice to have it, like here we call it a campus, we call it villages. So it's nice to hit a little balance, but still hitting that balance can be expensive, right?
Right.
Is that the goal?
Exactly, yeah, thank you. Yep.
Any other discussion? Hear none, prompt a vote.
We have 7 yeas, 1 nay.
And if I may make a comment, since I am the one nay, I'd just like to have more discussion on that cost.
Okay.
All right,
For
I
sure.
may change my vote at the board.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen.
Yeah, thank you.
And ladies.
Thank
All right, now we'll move on to our next agenda item. Next agenda item is appropriating American Rescue Plan Act local fiscal recovery funds to address the impact of COVID-19 on early childhood education staffing supply in Oakland County in partnership with the United Way for Southeast Michigan. Need a motion. Moved by Commissioner Cavell, seconded by Commissioner Wiper. Good morning.
Good morning. It's been a long time coming. I've been working on trying to address child care needs in our county for over a year. And when it was identified as an issue, I worked with Commissioner Gary McGilvery and Commissioner Karen Joliet to try to assemble a group of child care experts in the community to see what it was they needed. And Charlie was also a part of that team. I worked with the Great Start Collaborative, which was comprised of stakeholders from the child care realm in Oakland County, and that included the CEO of Oakland County Child Care, different schools, OLSA, Dawn Koger, who's an early coordinator for Oakland, early on coordinator, and particularly I wanted to give a shout out to Veronica Petchemer, who is the director of the Great Start Collaborative. So 2 items were really brought to our attention, and one was the need to build the pipeline of child care workers, that we were short and there were shortages, and in order to get our economy going again, we needed to provide more child care. And the second, of course, is salaries, and that's an issue that we've already addressed somewhat with the executive team, working with Jennifer Llewellyn, and there's something, when their initiative expires, we're gonna pick up and add to bonuses for child care workers, but that's coming in the future. So I've been working hand in hand. Barbara Winter's been incredible, and I would like to introduce Jeff Miles from the United Way, who's been an incredible partner. He has a broad range of understanding of this issue, so I'm going to let him explain what the resolution is about. Jeff?
Welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. And thank you all for having me today. I'm Jeff Miles. I'm Senior Director over Early Childhood at the United Way for Southeastern Michigan. In capacity, we oversee a 10-county region, so we have our thumb on the pulse of the trends in early childhood. And as Commissioner Gershenson alluded to, there's no greater impact, or few things have greater impact on economic recovery than quality early childhood education. Parents can get back to work and children get a great start towards their future. But we have to have enough certified staff to do that. And so when we hear about the governor's expansion of the 4-year-old preschool program, Head Start, the subsidy, we need to have certified staff in those classrooms. in our conversations as part of that committee, but also continuing with Oakland ISD, OLSA, and others, there remains a dearth of certified staff to meet the need. And so the base certification required for these classrooms, especially the subsidized, the low cost or no cost programs, is called the CDA, Child Development Associates. And United Way runs a 3-agency network across the Tri-County region to provide training around that CDA, as well as other licensing hours for workforce and staff in early childhood education. This work will be focused solely in Oakland County, and will focus on providing 4 cohorts of 25 each to do the trainings required to meet that CDA credential, as well as the self-directed trainings that will be provided by Oakland Family Services. So there's a 12-week cohort that meets every week on Saturdays generally, as well as self-directed trainings and other supports that will be provided by Oakland Family Services. We are certified gold nationally, so we have been doing this work for quite a while. We've had great success. We've trained over 500 individuals with about an 85% success rate. So we really think this will create a pipeline into early childhood education, allow more families to benefit from these programs, and really set Oakland County up for success.
Thank you.
So with that, are there any questions?
Any discussion? Commissioner Spiz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question, or short question. I'm in support of this. I'm just wondering, do we think we'll get enough people to take advantage of it, is my big question, and I'm glad to see there's going to be quarterly reports, because that's going to be something I'm going to be looking at. But from your guys' opinion, do you think you'll have enough people that take advantage of this?
Yeah, we have a variety of outreach strategies, and as part of that early childhood support network, we are talking with providers constantly that are looking to come into the GSRP programs but need to get their staff certified. We've worked with the state and their Teach Scholarship. There's wait lists for that, and so we leverage all of those things to keep the cost as low as possible. But that does give us a good sense of the desire for folks to participate in these trainings. And really, this is just the start to go on to a full associate's or potentially a bachelor's. And so as we think about, the county's desire for 80%, post-secondary, I think this is a great opportunity for that. And we'll leverage all of those marketing and outreach pieces as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
Well, and I just also want to mention the assistance of Alice and Ken Dobson from the ARPA team, how they helped work with Guidehouse to get this approved.
Excellent. Any other discussion? Hearing none, prompt to vote. Oh, Commissioner Wiper, last right in the slide.
In the history, thank you. Just in the history, we didn't have early childhood centers, right? Think about it. And now they're the busiest places ever, and the parents are really counting on them, and the 4-year-olds are in need of.
Well, that's new evidence that's come about when children really need to be a part of the educational system.
Right. We didn't have.
We didn't have it. That's correct.
I did.
Oh, okay. Any other discussion? Thank you, Commissioner Wiper. Commissioner Cavell.
Just also, quick shout out to Marcia for
Yeah.
marshaling all this, and also Hillary was a big part of making sure people showed up on time from her side of Telegraph.
Excellent. Thank you. So seeing no other discussion, prompt the vote, please.
Now it just rolls off your tongue.
Yeah, I'm working on it.
We have 8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion carries. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you all, and Jeff, stand by. We're on finance next.
Sounds good. Thank you. And thank you again for your support of this, Commissioner.
Oh, thank you.
So next we have agenda item, it's the next agenda item, the Board of Commissioners resolution creating special committee to study road commission operations options. Commissioner Charles, do you want to take my place so I can take the hot seat?
What did I sign up for? I'll entertain a motion to go into item 9H, creating special committee to study road commission operations options. Is there support? Mr. Cavell, is there a second to that? Mr. Woodward, thank you. Would you just state your name for the record?
William Miller, live in the Farmington district, moving to Farmington Hills.
Thank you.
In the
Floor is
process.
yours.
Thank you. So this is this is just a study group to see if it makes sense for the road commission to come to be part of the Board of Commissioners. This is done in other counties. We're one of the few counties that have not done it yet. Again, I say this is a study group. I feel it's our due diligence as commissioners to be good stewards of our powers. And I first learned this when we did commissioner training way back when I was first elected. It was brought up that we have this option. So we've talked about it for many years and just deciding to do it. And I'll take any questions.
Any questions from commissioners? Ms. Gershenson?
Well, I want to echo that this has been something we've talked about for years, and that this is in no way a punitive action towards the road commission. I know I've worked for many years very successfully with the road commission. This is just something that we have talked about exploring, and we're going to proceed to do that. But I just wanted to clarify.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions, Ms. Markham?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I'm in support of forming a committee to discuss this, and it has been discussed, I know, since, way back. Because I remember somebody else talking about this way back. But I do think that there is a potential conflict of interest kind of thing. And so I think if we are going to do this, it should, rather than be chaired by our Economic Development and Infrastructure Committee chair, I'd rather see it be chaired by the Board of Commissioners chair. That would be the change that I would ask to be
Or
made.
someone.
Or someone else. But, and I've talked with Commissioner Miller about this, and he understands why I have a little bit of concern about it. I like the idea of having the committee to really get to the meat of this. I just want to make sure that we're not setting ourselves or the road commission or any of our members up for chaos that doesn't need to exist. So.
Well, if I can answer, anything we do that it does a study group of this sort is going to bring chaos. Doesn't matter when it is, right? Because you're talking about potentially consolidating a department into the commission. And if it doesn't make sense, like if it doesn't save money, we're not going to do it, right? And it'll be made up, it's not just one person's decision, right? It's everybody's decision that's on the committee, on the study group.
I don't disagree with that,
Right.
Commissioner. Your point is well taken, but I can't support it with you as the chair.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Cavell?
I have a clarification question. Forgive me, I think I can still use this because it's first term.
Yeah, you're still a rookie.
You burned that card already.
Oh, man. Well, don't study groups figure out their chairs, like in the communications of a board meeting? It's like a conversation with the chair, or isn't it like the first meeting of the members?
So you're correct. So that
Like,
we.
are you already the chair? Kind of based
No,
on
he's the
Per the resolution, right? We could have done it where we had the chair of the commission just to do an appointment without this, but I wanted this to be open, transparent, right? And go through the conversation and make sure whoever's interested that they can be part of this, and that we appoint. So that's why we didn't do it just as we're setting up this committee, right?
Back here, okay, my bad, yep.
Mr. Spitz?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to piggyback off what Commissioner Markham said, is there, maybe if you can clarify why you do not believe there's a conflict of interest based on your other duties outside of the commission?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, the conflict of interest, I don't believe is there, is for the fact that I'm the political director for operating engineers. I have no, say over on any of the 600 contracts that we have with the operating engineers. So I have no say in negotiations. I have no say in what they do from day to day. It's no different than us appointing the chair of the road commission that is part of our union to be part of the road commission that makes those decisions, right? What's on those contracts. So it's no different than that. We'd like to have subject experts on all our committees, and I'd come from that field, so I feel like it'd be different if I was guitar string makers, which we do represent in Grand Rapids.
Any further discussion? Yes,
I do have another question, and I don't know if you can answer it or maybe Mrs. Chambers can answer it. Is this something the administration is also interested in looking at, or is it something that we just as a Board of Commissioners are looking at?
I can answer if you want. I talked to Coulter about it, and Executive Coulter, and he said it's a study group, so it's a study group. He's like, he's okay with that. At first, his first reaction was, which everybody thinks, like, it's automatically we're bringing them in, right? That's what we're doing the resolution. It's just, he goes, hey, if it's a study group, I'm all for study groups, right? We didn't do a feasibility study because we're trying to see if it saves money, not spend money to see if it saves money. So that's why it's the study group. And it's, like I said, it's just a study group.
We are completely comfortable with the Board of Commissioners exercising their prerogative to have a study group on this issue.
Thank you.
And someone will let me know if Hillary needs to state that closer to the mic for the record. But Ms. Gershenson, did you have something?
No.
Okay. Mr. Weipert? Just making sure all minds and hearts are clear. I do want to say that as a noob, along with Mr. Cavell, that's probably the number one thing people pull me aside on is the roads. And I'm like, oh, that's not me. And they're like, well, you're passing the buck. So I just, for context sake, people already think it's us. So I just want that to be clear. So if nothing further, Mr. Woodward.
Can we take a 2-minute recess?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And the wording is, we are
at ease.
At ease. Thank you.
What'd you say?
This has been our most robust EDI meeting ever. All righty, we're back
Wait.
in our official meeting. So is there any further discussion about this item? We're discussing item 9H, creating special committee to study road commission operations options.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
I would like to propose an amendment to the final be further resolved that the members of the committee will be appointed by the chair of the Board of Commissioners
Of the study group.
of the study group.
Well, it's a special committee.
Of the special committees, yes.
Ms. Gershenson, are you supporting?
I'm okay with that.
Okay.
Excellent. And is there any discussion on that? Otherwise, we can prompt the vote on the amendment.
Before I vote, your amendment, I understand your amendment, but are you striking out the last, be it further resolved?
Yeah, strike down.
Right, all being stricken out?
Yeah.
And replace with what I said.
Okay.
Yes.
That's what I wanted to make sure.
We have 7 yeas, 1 nay.
The votes in the affirmative are sufficient. That takes us to our main motion. Is there any further discussion on that? All right. Otherwise, we will call for, or prompt the vote on the main motion.
One moment.
Okay.
On the main motion. We have 6 yeas, 2 nays.
Votes in the affirmative are sufficient. Motion carries. And
Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Thank you. Would you vote no, Fizz? You voted no, who else voted no? Whitebird.
Oh.
Thank you.
I don't want to vote twice. All right, now we have our last agenda item is appropriations of American Rescue Plan Act local fiscal recovery funds for securing our water access initiative. Need a motion? Commissioner Cavell, seconded by Commissioner Charles. Mr. Cavell, Commissioner Cavell, we need you at the hot seat too.
Oh, no, it's them talking about.
Okay, you're not, okay. All right. Good afternoon, or morning, almost afternoon.
You want to go with this, Jim?
Not yet.
William?
What's that? Yeah, I said,
Tell them to talk.
yeah, I said actually, good afternoon. I don't know if they can hear me or,
Commissioner Nash?
well,
Oh, there we go.
there you go. It looked like Steve was trying to talk, but I don't know if he,
Is my audio working?
there you are now. There you go.
Jim, did you want to introduce the topic, or I can just speak at a high level to it, however you want to roll?
Sure. Yeah, this is funding for the affordability program we're doing. I'll let Steve go ahead and kind of give us the 30,000 foot.
Sure, I'll keep it at a high level. The staff member spearheading this effort, this affordability study, Kelsey Cook, she couldn't make the meeting today, so I'll be able to cover at a very high level what we're doing at the Water Resources Office. We also have another staff member, Sarah Rubino. She's on the call. She is in the details, part of the coalition that's looking at this affordability study. And by way of a very brief history, our office applied for and received a $400,000 grant from the state to look into affordability. And what we mean by affordability is looking to help folks with assistance to pay their water bills. And so going through that process, we focused on the communities of Royal Oak Township and Pontiac, the two communities that can benefit most from a program such as this for assistance. And so we established a coalition with community members and other groups to participate in the discussion on how best to move forward. And we're coming around the bend with that process, working on our final report, final recommendations. And the real key is to provide assistance to households that find themselves below the poverty level, to help them pay their water bills. And right now, the program that's out there that's most talked about, most familiar with, it's called the RAP program, and that's sponsored by Great Lakes Water Authority. And Oakland County does receive a portion of funding on the order of $800,000 for water bill assistance through the RAP program. But what has happened in the past few years with the pandemic and a moratorium on shutoffs, enrollment in this program is way down. By our calculations, only 2.5% of Oakland County eligible households that can take advantage of this program are currently enrolled. So there's a steep drop-off of people enrolling to get help. And that conversely led to a higher rise in water bills that remain unpaid across the county that we're seeing. So the goal of the program is to get the assistance to the households before this water bill debt is certified to their tax roll of their property. So some of the changes with the RAP program that are coming forward that I think are key is the program was now going to be run by the United Way, and we just heard from a representative of the United Way. So we think that's a great change that's going to help with the RAP program. And where we fit in, Water Resources Office, is our customers who need assistance rely on our office, on our billing folks, to direct them to get this assistance. And that's the real key of what we're trying to develop here, is to get people who are unable to pay their bills, to establish that communication, to let them know assistance is available, and send them in the right direction so that they can get help. And we're going to be doing that through marketing and communication and a lot of collaboration with community action agencies. And right now our emphasis is going to be on Pontiac and Royal Oak Township, who can benefit the most. But ultimately, this is going to be a countywide program for anybody who needs assistance and qualifies for assistance. What's before you in this resolution, there's a couple items. We've already expended the $400,000 offered by the state, but there's still a lot of work to be done on finishing off our policies and programs and our communication efforts for Oakland County. And so part of the resolution asked for an additional $312,000 for us to continue with those efforts. And I believe in the packet there was a breakdown of the activities and how that number was calculated. For the background. The other part of it is there's a request for $1.2 million, and that is due because Oakland County's share of the RAP program is insufficient to cover the costs of those who would qualify. So we see as enrollment increases, we will have more need than the $800,000 provided. And so that is where the request of the $1.2 million comes in from the American Rescue Plan funds. There's a long-range goal, maybe not long-range, but the ultimate goal, I guess is the best way to put it, is we're working with state legislatures to try to have a statewide policy and a funding mechanism built in to have this type of assistance for water bills. And the best parallel to that is there's the heat and warmth fund, right, for gas and electricity, and that's a statewide program. So our effort is to try to follow that type of arrangement on a statewide basis to help folks with their water bills. Again, a very high level overview of what's going on here, what our request is, but we can drill down to specifics with Sarah, who's available for questions, and we can address your questions at this time.
Commissioner Spiz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So if I understand correctly, you're looking for $312,000 to finish putting together the program and the policy itself to try to increase the usage. And then you want to allocate $1.2 million on top of what's already out there for RAP to make that a cool $2 million that is potentially out there. So my question is why would we allocate any additional funds now when we still don't have full usage of the program of the $800,000? To me, that is putting the cart before the horse. I mean, I'd be in favor of the 312, but outside of that, to me, it makes no sense at this point. Maybe in 6 months it does, when we can prove that we can actually get people to use it and take advantage of monies that's already out there. So either we separate them, or I'll make a motion to postpone until another time until we can have further discussion.
So which one would you like?
I'll make a motion to postpone until we have further discussion.
It's been moved, it's been motion on the table to postpone until further discussion.
I'll support it.
Supported by Commissioner Wiper.
So is this discussion time?
And the motion.
Well, you already had the motion.
Yeah, so then do we
Discussion and
discuss the
postponement.
motion?
Discussion of postponement, yes.
Yeah.
The merits of the issue.
Well, so you asked if you could either make an amendment to make it 312 or postpone.
Right, and I asked him, which one do you want?
Right.
And he said postponement, and I do believe Hillary Chambers.
So I
would
was
like to
talking,
speak to.
William.
Yeah.
So there's two things here. One, I'd be more than happy if the WRC is okay with it to make it down to 312 to do what you're saying. However, if we postpone, GLEWA is starting their own affordability program on July 1st. And so us not having this going, or at least something towards water affordability, would, one, stop the meetings that Yolanda and I are going to, two, make us behind the 8 ball in working with GLEWA. So if everyone's okay with it and you don't like the 1.2 million thing, then we could do the 312 if WRC is okay with that.
Yeah, I would say that the 312,000 is critical to our efforts to continue developing and putting the finishing touches on this program. I understand we may have some time because there is $800,000 that's currently allocated to Oakland County to use. So as long as we can keep our efforts moving forward, that would work for us in the short term.
Okay. Ms. Chambers?
Thank you. I'd like to support the notion of asking the committee to postpone consideration of this, just so that we would have an opportunity to work on it. I have heard discussions of this, but saw the language for the first time last night. It hasn't been approved as an eligible ARP expenditure at this point. And I will reiterate that it has been a tortured process at GLEWA that we and the Water Resource Commissioner and Mr. Hobbs has been involved in this. We've been very unhappy with. I mean, Oakland County only uses 7% of what is eligible for our residents. And so oftentimes, you know, we have to fight efforts to reallocate that to other parts of the water system who are using more of it. So it has been a constant effort to try to improve the uptake of these resources. GLEWA actually undertook a study about why it wasn't being used. They shifted it out to OLSA over the last year. That didn't work out well. Now they're going to United Way. We hope that will be a better process. So we certainly support actively, and Marcus Pearson, who was with community engagement, had been actively working with Water Resources and GLEWA to try to increase the access of this program. But we think that has to be the top priority right now. It is the responsibility of GLEWA to help us ensure our residents can access that program that we pay into. So we would like to focus on that. I don't have a clear understanding of why the 312 is necessary to increase the ability to access the program, but I'm certainly willing to work on that and see whether that would be an eligible expense under ARP. But we just need more time in order to be able to do that.
Commissioner Charles and Commissioner Cavell.
Motions to postpone without a definite date are basically putting it away forever. So I would.
I don't mind putting a date on it.
Yeah. That was my initial comment.
Proposing a date?
Well, yeah, at least, I mean, July 1 will have come and gone, but we do have committee on the 13th of July to give the executive time perhaps to review it in more depth. But I liked what Mr. Spitz said originally about the 312 perhaps coming on its own, but right now we have a postponement on the thing, so that's my only ask.
I like what Yolanda's saying, because part of the reason that this is coming up in a non sequitur way is because WRC's talked to the executive's office about this for some time, and action has not been taken. So this is an effort to make sure that action is taken, especially in light of the July 1st deadline, in light of the fact that water moratoriums have been lifted, in light of the fact that when you see in your packet, over 12,000 households are at risk for water-based foreclosure. So I agree with Yolanda, if we're going to postpone, let's make sure it's on the agenda with a real plan that everyone agrees on for the 13th. Or do the 312 today and then have a bigger real plan for the 13th. I'd prefer that one if that's okay with everybody. And as you see in your packet, the 312 is line itemed out.
I will amend my motion to put the July 13th date out there. I will also throw out there that potentially, it's up to the administration's office, if they so choose on the 312, it's something we can walk on our board meeting on the 23rd. For
Okay.
that, I know if they can confirm that is eligible prior to that meeting.
Okay, cool.
And I think that's, so right now, I'd postpone until July 13th.
All right, so there's a motion on the table to postpone this till July 13th to work with the executive up.
With Hillary and WRC, is that enough time for you all to be able to mock something up?
I'm comfortable with making every effort to understand what the 312 is and why that's important to supplement the effort of GLEWA and United Way to get Oakland County's residents access to the money sitting at GLEWA. Absolutely. If there is something that we can do, I don't know what that $312,000 goes to, if it's staff to go out to communities and help people understand how to apply. I don't know that at all, but I'm willing to do whatever we can with Chairman Woodward to figure out whether we can do that in time for the next board meeting.
Okay.
I do have concerns about the bigger package and making a decision today that we would appropriate money in case it would be necessary to fill a gap that doesn't exist right now. So that, I would not be comfortable addressing until we figure out how we use the money that is available to us at GLEWA.
Okay. Thank you. Cool.
All right, again, so there's a motion on the table to postpone this until July 13th. It's moved by Commissioner Spiz, seconded by Commissioner Wiper. So we did the discussion. Prompt the vote, please.
Thank you.
Yes.
We have 8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, we have the second public comment. Anybody from the public like to speak? State your name and community you live in. You have 3 minutes.
Ross Baranko, City of Novi. I believe that the sewage issue, I think we should have a countywide, long-term, comprehensive plan and have it updated annually. And on items 9D, I mentioned earlier in earlier comment that that there's a repetition in the wording of the agreement that items 1.5 and 1.8 are duplicates, and no one on the commission addressed that during the time we were discussing that. And the scope approval too, some of the commissioners were absent when I made public comment and suggested that it should be elected officials who approve the scope of the work to be done with the Oakland University, and not unelected officials having that ability. And that's written in what was approved and voted on in the affirmative today. And it wasn't really addressed. It was partially addressed by Commissioner Spiz, but it wasn't really put forth that it should be a change of who has the authority to approve the scope, not just show it to you and say, this is what we approved, but we, the commission, approve it. And although children run faster than you adults, dogs run faster than children, and dogs could be trained to knock a child down and allow an adult to catch up with a running child. And on the facilities for the Children's Village, the fencing, they presented no map to show where the fence is going to be located. There may be some corners where you can cut across and reduce the lineage of the footage that they're proposing, but they haven't presented what that is. We haven't seen it. Where is this fence? You know, how many gates? Where are the gates? Can we eliminate gates? You know, there was no detail presented, and yet the commission approved it. And this is something I think that the commission should be looking into is where exactly is this fence, and can you cut off some lineage and save some money on it? And then there's also the COVID-19. A lot of the problems that we're facing, that we're having to contend with and work on and spend lots of money on, is the mishandling of the whole COVID-19 situation by all of the federal government, the state governments, even the local governments. If we handled this better, we wouldn't be having these expenses and these problems. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else from the public would like to speak? Anyone from the public would like to speak? Anyone from the public would like to speak? Hearing none, we'll call public comment closed at this time. Oh, I'm sorry.
And that's okay. I just wanted to say there is a repetition in that the gentleman referred to, so maybe we could make an amendment or a administrative change to strike that out before we vote on that at the board meeting.
We'll have
Thank
Corp
you.
Counsel do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
We'll
So
fix
now
it.
we'll move on to, you got Commissioner Charles?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'm not sure where this fits in, but since I basically want the fencing thing to be on the main agenda to include some type of visual aid.
It already is.
I voted no, so.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
To include some kind of visual aid, maybe? Is it within the realm of?
Yeah.
Both Commissioner Miller and I have it. We can send it to you.
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
All right, now on the other business, we have one agenda item on the other business. Opposing the imposition of Highland Park's water and sewer debt on Oakland County communities. We got Commissioner Moss here. Moved by Commissioner Charles, seconded by Commissioner Spiz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee. I'm aware of the hour. I'll try to go fast. You'll recall we had an original resolution which was submitted, I believe, in May, put to this committee and put over. The substance of it is that Highland Park has not been paying its water and sewer bill. These are being reallocated to other communities, including Oakland County communities. This isn't fair. This is a cost on our communities. Oh, Jim Nash is here. Excellent. And so we don't like it. The purpose of the original resolution were twofold. One was to ask the state to step in, because it was the state in 2012 that started the problem by shuttering the Highland Park plant ostensibly for a couple of days. It is still shuttered. At the state to please step in and do something about it, and secondly to express support for our communities in dealing with this. However, not to specify what the community should or should not be doing, and definitely not to be saying withholding any money, but simply to express our views. At the committee meeting I think it was a couple weeks ago, said that the Water Resources Commissioner had some concerns, and that I was told to go and work with the Water Resources Commissioner and see if we could come up with anything. Well, we met yesterday, and we did. Okay. And Mr. Nash, I don't want to totally speak for him, but they had a number of concerns, all of which I found totally valid. If you want me to go clause by clause, I can. Otherwise, I will simply...
Are you speaking of the amendment that you have?
I'm talking about the amended version, which is submitted.
Which is, it's on the agenda, that's what I'm asking.
So it is on the agenda, so I am, this is what we're talking about.
Yeah, so we have an amendment on this item. It's offered as a substitute. So you have, move it.
I move the amendment.
Moved by Commissioner Spiz, seconded by Commissioner Wiper. So we have to, you want to talk about the amendment, or you guys, any questions on it? If you
I'd
looked
like
at it already.
Commissioner Nash to address the amendment.
Yep. Yes. Commissioner Nash.
Certainly, I appreciate that. Yeah, we sat down with Commissioner Moss yesterday, Kelsey Cook and Carrie Cox. She does our all our regional operations, and we just wanted to make sure that it was, structurally correct. I mean, the things that were said were correct. We made a few minor changes there. And we also brought up the most recent actions that have happened. Last week, it was last week, the Great Lakes Water Authority Board voted to not put that $6.7 million that they were going to put into the new rates in the new rates. So that saved about $6.7 million for the ratepayers across the system. The communities that pay into that. Which is good. That was one of the most important things. It's what brought it the attention of everybody that they were going to be doing that this year. So they've taken that back for this year's rates, which has given us the opportunity, all the people involved, the opportunity to do a little bit more negotiation. The governor has written Great Lakes Water Authority, and there's been an exchange of letters there. And then late last week, the circuit court ruled that the state had, Highland Park had to turn over the money they had been putting away as part of that court case. So it's several $1 million have been released now, and also included in that is some funding for the attorneys for Great Lakes Water Authority, because the court found in our favor. So these are good moves that have made a difference, and I think it's given us an opportunity to do more negotiation around this. Both Highland Park and Great Lakes Water Authority have said that they want to do more negotiation through that court. So this offers us something that we haven't had in the past, and this is accounted for in this resolution. We're just basically calling for the governor's office to continue that help with this, and all the partners that are involved with it to continue that work. So I think it's a good resolution that just reinforces what the communities really want to be seen by all the parties involved.
Thank you. Any discussion? Commissioner Cabell.
I don't understand fully the point of writing this, and it feels mean-spirited. Do you have any feedback about that?
I'm sorry, what do you mean feels mean-spirited?
If state and GLEWA and WRC are already taking action, and so we're just kind of putting out in the world, we don't want to pay Highland Park's water debt, but that's already being addressed by other authorities.
Well, yes and no. Actually, and I don't want to speak for Commissioner Nash, who I think totally described it. We have a dispute with Highland Park. It is ongoing. It has not been completed. It has not been concluded. And we, at least the sense of the resolution, which you can support or not, is that our communities, and we have a memo actually from the Water Resources Commissioner about how much our communities have been paying, and that this is intolerable, this is not good, and we want this situation to stop. We want the governor to continue to help us make progress in dealing with Highland Park, GLEWA as well, and the Water Resources Commissioner. In many ways, we are attempting to both strengthen the hand of Commissioner Nash and GLEWA, and expressing support that we understand that our communities have had to pay money that they should not have had to pay. And we support them, and we are, we're in their corner, without saying why we think they ought to do it. Just that they should, and that's their decision. So essentially, this purpose of this resolution is to give Commissioner Nash and GLEWA a little more ammunition, also to show the communities that we represent that have had to pay unjust amounts of money, that we recognize this, and we're on their side.
I just want to say one last thing. we just assigned $10 million to pay for people that aren't going to be paying for their water because we're giving them a grant of $10 million. And we don't want to give Highland Park any grace for some reason. So, go figure.
Well, I would put it that way. Highland Park has not been paying for 10 years, or excuse me, not for 10 years, for quite a few years. The arrearages are substantial. For instance, I'm looking at, now this may have been changed.
I'd like to call for the vote.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we have a motion to call for the vote on the amendment. It's supported by Commissioner Spiz. So we'll prompt the vote on the amendment.
What's the vote?
It's on the amendment. The substitute amendment.
Not calling the question.
Not calling the question.
Yeah. Not call, yeah.
Oh, there we go. We have 6 yeas, 2 nays.
All right, motion carries, and now we have the vote on the amendment to the original, the main motion as it is, yeah, with the amendment, as amended with substitute. We need somebody to move it, right?
No, it's
Oh, okay, that's right, we already moved, yeah.
I'd like
You have a discussion?
Okay, yeah. To speak to the main motion here, and I hear what Commissioner Cavell is talking about. I mean, this is a incredibly complicated issue. No one wants to pay for someone else's water system, except also recognizing a water system is going to have its costs, almost whether or not Highland Park's part of it. And I want to applaud our Water Resource Commission office has been an active player at the table. I thought about adding some additional things like this, like we really need to call on our state legislators. I mean, the only way to solve it, there is a debt liability in the system, and the only way to solve it is to come up with money. And who doesn't have it, and even though I guess Highland Park has some money, allegedly, that will start paying into it, it certainly doesn't have $40-some million. And under no circumstances will they'll ever have $40 million, which means the state's gonna have to come in at some point and put money in. And I see we're giving this to a lot of people and telling them all to do this. At the end of the day, it's going to require the state legislature, well, I guess the state legislature isn't, the delegations on there. So, I mean, the state's gonna have to appropriate the money to make this whole. And the reason why we actually have a little bit of a reduction to make sure the suburban community ratepayers are not paying is because the state sent some money over. And we need to probably send a little, more to fix the system long-term and get a commitment to pay for it. So that's the bottom line, because Highland Park does not have the money. And the system costs X amount of dollars to operate.
So then why just tell everyone we don't want to help our neighbors in a ceremonial resolution?
Chuck's gonna draw that. There are other Wayne County.
You're out of order, sir. This is the agenda item for the commissioners. All good, Commissioner Woodward?
I'm all good.
Oh, yeah,
Yes.
okay.
I was more of a, just.
Oh, yeah, okay,
Yeah,
all right.
no questions.
All right. Anybody else before we prompt the vote? See none, okay, we'll prompt the vote.
We have 7 yeas, 1 nay.
Motion carries, thank you. Is there any other business that comes before this committee? Any other business? Seeing none, we'll call the committee meeting adjourned at 12:06.